A recent Consumer Reports article recently made headlines saying that their tests have found rice and foods made from rice, including infant rice cereals, have the most toxic form of arsenic. Now, the Consumer Reports study found some important trends, including that white rice grown in Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, and Texas, which makes up about 76% of total domestic rice product, had higher levels of total arsenic and inorganic arsenic, with the average arsenic levels higher for brown rice than for white. Joining us now by phone to talk about this is Bay City family rice farmer Bob Reed. Bob, thanks for joining us. You've had a hell of a year.
Well, it's been a different year, Marlo. Of course, we didn't have a rice crop this year because of no irrigation water, so it's been kind of an odd year to say the least. But we're still here.
What is your reaction to this new report, Bob?
Well, you might expect I'm a little disappointed with the report from Consumer Reports that stated worrisome levels of arsenic in rice. And arsenic is a natural occurring element in nature. It's found in water and food, soils, and lots of places. But it's in my opinion, it's not a news story. It made the news. FDA, Food and Drug Administration's been testing for arsenic in a variety of foods since as far back as 1991. And they're currently conducting an in-depth study and analysis of over 1,000 rice products.
So this is a continuing story that just comes up every now and then.
Well, why it surfaced now, I'm not sure. This is an ongoing study right now with the FDA, and like I mentioned, lots of rice products that they're looking at and doing their study on, and there will be a report. When the study's completed, there will be a report available, and any recommendations that they come up with, and this is, for what I'm hearing, should be available by the end of the year.
I want to ask you a specific question now. The report actually points a finger at fields where cotton and rice are rotated in the same fields. Why are these two crops rotated when one is wet and one is dry?
Well, that's I'll answer your question. And my answer to it is here locally, that's not a common rotation. Now, probably in the state of Arkansas would be maybe a more common rotation. There's lots of things that go into a farmer's decision-making process when it comes to rotating crops and what crops to rotate with. There's things like how one crop will benefit the crop that's following it. For instance, soybean is a legume, and legume plants produce naturally nitrogen and place it into the soil, and it's available in the soil. And so you might follow a soybean crop with something like corn or Marlo that require high levels of nitrogen. There's other things like breaking disease cycles. There's the crops that have common fungal diseases, and if you plant them one behind the other, well, you never break that cycle, and so the problem just magnifies itself over the years. There's another consideration would be the timeliness of the field work. For instance, our ratoon rice crop's not harvested until late in the fall, and depending on what the weather does, if we get into a rainy cycle and the fields are wet and we can't get in the fields to prepare the crop or prepare the land for a spring seeded crop, well, then that's a problem. Soil types, some crops do better in heavier clay soils than they do in more coarse sandy soils, and so you've got a lot of things that producers look at when they sit down and try to come up with a crop rotation and reasons for doing it. And that's just some of the considerations there.
You know, there are 3 members of Congress, all from northeastern states, New Jersey and Connecticut and New York, who have introduced the Rice Act, which is Reducing Food-Based Inorganic and Organic Compounds Exposure Act, meant to limit the levels of arsenic in rice and requiring the FDA to set a maximum permissible level of arsenic in rice and food containing rice. Can you give me your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that doesn't surprise me, and go on to say that I won't be surprised if there's legislation, to that effect, written and submitted for consideration by Congress. But I do know there was a similar story several years ago dealing with arsenic in fruit juices, and it generated the same thing. There was legislation submitted, but it never got off the floor. To guess that this will follow the same path, I don't know, but I won't be surprised that if the legislation is introduced.
Right. And finally, will this affect what you plant next season?
Well, you're asking, am I going to plant rice next year?
Yes.
My intentions are to plant rice. The only reason that I wouldn't plant rice would be for lack of irrigation water again. And at this point in time, the jury's still out on that. We don't know whether we'll have water for irrigation next year or not. But the FDA is not recommending at this time that consumers change any of their consumption patterns with rice and rice products, and neither am I. I think it's safe. I'll continue to eat it. I'll continue to feed it to my family. The rice cereal was mentioned also, and it's been used in food for infants and young children for years, and with good reason. It's gluten-free, it's less allergenic, it's easily digested,
right,
and it's a good source of iron and other vitamins. So, I'll continue to eat it. I'll continue to feed it to my family. And if you've got listeners that know only one way to prepare rice, and that's the old traditional rice and gravy, if they'd be interested in recipes for other rice dishes, I could certainly make that available.
I like that sound. We will certainly post them if you give them to us. Bob Reed,